Hey, I'm gonna take this vintage Walker floor jack with tons of automotive history wrapped up into it and an intense personal connection, and I'm gonna mess it all up with a new paint job. Ah! Hey, thanks for watching the channel. Paintucation by Kevin Tetz. Welcome back if you've been here before, and welcome if you haven't been. First of all, I want to say thanks. Thanks for you guys for watching. If you weren't watching, we wouldn't be growing. So we really appreciate it. So anyway, here we are. One of the last episodes, I talked about this jack. This floor jack is a Walker 3-ton floor jack. It is a living, breathing, rolling, functional antique. It is literally the best floor jack that I've ever used. It's got a quick throw. If you look at that, it goes up really high, really quick, and it's got a long wheelbase, which means it's very stable. Everything on this thing works perfectly. So I threw the question out there, because I'm using it. I've been using it. And I'll talk about how I acquired it in a little bit here. But I threw the question out, would you restore it? Would you put a paint job on it and make it nice and shiny new? Or would you just leave the patina? And it kind of lit up, it lit up the phones. And I had 99.99% of everybody that said, leave it alone. The patina tells a story. The history is on display. Awesome this, don't you dare. I didn't have anybody threaten me, but I had people, no, I did have somebody threaten me. They said, if you put a paint job on that jack, I'm leaving the channel. So that's as close as we got to a threat. You know, you guys watch when you want to and all that type of stuff. But overwhelmingly, you agreed with me, and I throw the question out there just because I'm in the world of refinish and repainting and restoration, but I also really respect the preservation part, survivor cars, keeping the history. They're only original once, right? And I really appreciate that. As a matter of fact, I wrote a book. Give me a second. Called Patina, How to Create and Preserve. Now this is, I'm super proud of this. This was such a fun thing to do. I'd never actually written a book. I've been a freelance journalist for 20 years, writing magazine articles and columns and op-ed blah, blah, blahs, but I'd never attempted a book. So the guys at CarTech approached me. They wanted to do something on how to preserve patina, but also how to recreate authentic patina, i.e. faux-tina. Now you guys weighed in heavily on the garbage Camaro as to probably not do a faux-tina job. So we're gonna do a super shiny paint job on that truck. But I wanted to go down the rabbit hole of figuring out how to preserve it, how to maintain it, and how to blend it in, how to create an authentic patina look, because there's a ton of terrible looking fake patina out there, and I wanted to show. So interesting stuff in here. We talk about using airbrush techniques. I talk about the history of patina. There's a vehicle that I did as a patina project on one of the TV shows. I've got a guitar, one of my guitars, in the instrument community, that's called relict. And so I've got a relict Stratocaster, and you know, I just go down the rabbit hole of different types of things, what oxidation is, all that kind of stuff. So when I did a really neat project on, where is it? Vintage sign painting and creating a complete patina job. My buddy Ian Johnson had this Volkswagen Beetle. It was his first car, and his wife found it for him and got it back for him. And we ended up doing a kind of a fun thing, because we've done a couple of his hardcore off-road rigs, and we just showed the process of creating authentic looking patina on this thing, because it's what he wanted. And we ended up with a really neat, where's the finished product? Where is it? it ended up being a really neat project at the end of it, and it looks really cool. So we know that we can take brand new and make it look old. Why do I go down these rabbit holes? I don't know, because I can't shut up, and I can't stop my mouth, and I can't stop the cortex from feeding me all this stuff that comes out the face hole. But I want this patina like it is. I know you guys are right. I knew you guys were right, and I don't want to ruin this. Somebody suggested if this thing is wrecked, if I have to rebuild it, then let's do a paint job on it then. But it means too much to me. I told you guys this was part of the Pratt Brothers garage equipment, which was a functional mechanic shop from the 30s all the way up into the late 1970s. And then my good friend Mark Lambert purchased it a few years ago. But it is a time capsule. Vintage benches, vintage equipment, a Coke machine that it seems like it was around before they even invented Coca-Cola. They were just trying mixtures. This place was hallowed, and it was locked in time, and it was wonderful. So I ended up with Walker Texas Ranger, and I also ended up with Stan and Ollie and Laurel and Hardy. I got a set of 4 of these jack stands. These 2 are here. Laurel and Hardy are out under my 66 C10. So we're going to do the same thing with them as we're going to do with Walker Texas Ranger here. And we're going to lock in the patina. We're going to use some of Derek's wipe-on Clearcoat. We're going to carefully clean these, get the dirt off, but we're going to use non-abrasive methods, and we're going to walk you through every step of it to clean it, and then we're going to lock it in place. I don't want to create fake patina. There's beautiful patina on here already. It's authenticity. Every scratch tells a story. Every scuff mark tells a story. The wear on the wheels and everything. And the fact that these are functional pieces of equipment that are still safe, right? It's a jack stand. It's the same conventional thing, but hey, it's Stan and Ollie. We're going to lock it in place for a couple of different reasons, because it's what should be done. But also, I want to pay tribute to my good friend Mark, who we tragically lost a couple of years ago. And I'm getting emotional talking about this because I love the man. And he was a mentor to me, and one of my heroes. We met on the set of his TV show on DIY Network. It was called Classic Car Restoration. And we became fast friends. Our producer, Melissa Cross, introduced us. And he was up the road in Nashville, and I'm just south of Nashville. And we ended up striking up a friendship. And he was, like I said, he meant a lot to me. So my tribute to my good friend Mark is going to be locking these things in, because when I look at these, I think about him, and I think about him fondly, and I want to lock it into where every time I pull this piece of equipment out, I see my buddy. So for all the reasons you guys talked about, and all the reasons that I've got here in my heart, we're going to lock this in time. And I'm going to show you how to do it, because there's things that you shouldn't do on trying to maintain and preserve patina, and there's also things that will really help. So here we go. We're going to start with a cleanup. Now this jack weighs 400 pounds. So I'm going to use my little hand dolly here, and we're going to get it up to a more comfortable working height. Stan and Ollie, yeah, that's a no-brainer. But this little cart thingy has locking casters that don't work. Oh, wait. On. Yeah, the casters don't work. So this is going to be fun. This is going to probably look like a Mickey Mouse cartoon. But what I'm going to try and do is get this up on the deck and lift it up to where I can work on it comfortably. So, yeah, here we go. We'll use leverage as our friend. Oh, almost. All right, I don't want to throw my back out. Okay, that wasn't horrible. All right. And I don't know how much it weighs, but it's probably, I'm going to say 60, 80 pounds, something like that. And I don't know what the difference is between modern equipment. I've got a floor jack sitting over there, and it'll lift up a car. I've got some floor jacks from the store with the red label, and they'll lift up a car. I've got floor jacks all over the place. Hydraulics are hydraulics. Hydraulic force is an awesome force, and we can use it in our tools. All right, so we're pretty safe there. All right, so here's what we're going to look at. Check this out. Come real close here. This is the ID tag on the jack, and it's bradded in, riveted in place. It's upside down. You can't see it. Yeah, there you go. Now, that gives us all the numbers. I think even the patent number is on there. And it tells us a little bit of history about it, what the model number is. It's a 783. It says it's 3 ton, all that kind of stuff. So that tells us what the jack is. Now in here, this, I didn't even know this came loose, but this is just a pop-off cover that's held in place with spring steel, Brus spring steel clips right here. And we see the hydraulic mechanism. There's the bleed valves and the refill valve and all that kind of stuff. We're leaking a little bit of hydraulic fluid right there. And look here, this is interesting. This says rebuilt with genuine Walker parts. So this has been rebuilt. And like I said, we've chased the patent number down and the ID numbers down. This thing is straight out of the 1940s. With the Pratt Brothers garage and the history of that place, that tells us that this thing serviced and lifted up pre-NASCAR moonshine runners, and I'm not kidding. That's the history of the Pratt Brothers garage, and they would bring those drivers in their cars in the back door, give them services, engine tune-ups, modifications, things like that, and it's kind of a neat part of the history of that, because if you don't know this, the I-40 corridor all the way through Tennessee was a major moonshine running route, and up into the mountains where in Prohibition they illegally made those adult beverages. It was a real thing, and it was an operation that lasted a long time. And then those drivers needed an outlet for driving. They didn't need an outlet. Anyway, what happened is that the early days of NASCAR were formed from some of those talented drivers with modified cars that excelled at what they both did, and they started racing each other. So here we are. So now we have Talladega and Ricky Bobby and all the stuff, right? So this thing is functional. Everything works great. I might address this. I might try and snug that up and see what kind of seal is there. I'm not going to take anything apart, but that is nasty. I am going to clean this, and I'm going to try and clean it non-destructively. And we're going to lube some little things. I'll lube the wheel bearings and things like that. And then we'll talk about how to preserve the finish. So I'm not going to go too far down the rabbit hole here. I'm just going to check a couple of things. So first thing I'm going to do is put some gloves on, because, yeah. I'm just testing to see how tight this is. I don't want to strip any threads or anything like that, but I do want to take a look at them, because I don't want this thing to leak. So there's a brass seal, brass washer, or copper, whatever you want to call it, right there. And that is supposed to seal the top. So it doesn't need to be super torqued down, but the mating surface needs to be pretty flat. So I'm good with that. That's a dent right there. And this plug doesn't go past that little contact ring. You can see the witness mark there between the plug. I don't think I'm going to replace this. If it continues to show me that it's leaking, I might replace this with another copper washer down the road. What I'm trying to do is remove it where I can flip it upside down. And I can't right now. Give me a second. So I just went and got a flat screwdriver. What I was trying to do, and that's an air vent, I believe, because it has to, yeah, anyway. I was trying to get this to where it would unthread so I could flip it over, but I don't want to risk damaging it. So we're just going to put it back in, and we're going to give it a snug. So I might plug that relief hole because I'm going to turn it upside down, and I don't want it to leak out all over the place. No Doug, it's just snuggus. That sounded really strange. So I'll just set that right there on the floor. And we're going to take a look in here. So to wipe it off, we need something to help get the grease off. So we got a couple of different options. I found this stuff a few years ago. This is made from canola oil. See, I know that because it says made from canola oil, which is, if you've ever been to the Midwest or up in Canada and you see the farms, it's the yellow blooms on acres. Lots of stuff is made from canola oil, margarine, and I'm almost running out of it. But this is a non-destructive, plant-based lubricant. They use this for penetrating oil, and you know, if you got a seized up engine, you put it down in the cylinders, and it creeps really nicely, but it also cleans very well. You can see just a little bit of it is getting rid of that film. Film at 11.
I'm not wearing any pants. Film at 11.
And I think that I'm just going to give this a bit of a dousing in here. Yeah, look how nice that's cleaning up. All right, I'm going to get a little brushy toolie, and then we're going to continue on. Always, when you're dealing with stuff like this, and even polishing and surface correction on paints, you want to try the least aggressive method first, and then go down the rabbit hole. If you don't get a good result, then you can find something stronger. But when we're trying to preserve and lock it in, then we want to try the least aggressive method first, and this seems to be pretty okay. The other thing I've got is my wax and grease remover for Body Shop, which is just a nice cleaner, and we're going to be using that on some of the other surfaces as well. This might leave something that would interfere with the coating. Anyway, all right, I'm going to get a brush. I'm kind of stoked. I'm excited about this. This is fun. So I found some brushes. This is kind of a stiff bristle brush. This is a soft bristle brush. I use these for detailing different things, and of course that, you know, it's not a soft bristle, but cleaning tires, stuff like that. So we're going to try and not screw up the vintage stickerage and kind of expose some of the history here. I think it's going to work nice. Yep, that's working great. These springs, well, let's deal with this first here. Need to be careful around that. I don't want to first do no harm, okay? I want to clean and only remove the contamination and dirt. I'm not even worried about this here. Paint won't stick to that. I'm not even worried about it because we've got another process that we're going to do after that. But I'm not painting or clear coating or preserving anything in here other than just cleaning off the several decades of schmutz. But this right here, you can see that. That's actually a paint coating. And it's not powder coat. This predates powder coating. So when these things were assembled, it was a high quality process, right? The inside of the jack that nobody's ever going to see was painted. And why do we paint steel? Goes back to the early days of manufacturing anything. Paint first started out as a coating to stop corrosion. And so these coatings in here wasn't because somebody had an artistic bone in their body. It was to keep this piece of equipment alive for decades and centuries. And you know what? It works. So I don't want to get in there with sandpaper and scuffing pads and ruin that history. And it's just kind of a neat reminder of a high quality manufacturer and the lengths that they went to. By the way, look up your current prices for a floor jack. You're going to see them anywhere from a couple $100 up into $500, $600, $700. Well, I did some research on this, and I found an original sales brochure for this model jack. $59. $59. And it was circa late 40s-ish, something like that. Granted, dollars are worth less. The value of the money that we spent, $59 back then, you know, it might even scale. But it's just kind of cool to see that and see, I don't know, what a good piece of shop equipment that somebody had to invest in actually cost back in the day. So it's kind of neat to go down that research rabbit hole. All right, so I got to go find another can of this stuff, and yeah, I'm out. But I know I've got another can. I think it might be babysitting the garbage Camaro in the other shop, but I want to continue to use that stuff. By the way, if you're in Canada, I know you can go to Canadian Tire and get shop stuff. I don't know where we can get it down here in the U.S., but I think there's a source somewhere. I'll have to talk to my buddy that makes that stuff. Okay, I found another can, a full can, so that one's out.
Yay.
And I've got a full can left of this. That should be fine and plenty enough to get through this cleaning process. But Bill, if you're watching this, HBO, help a brother out. I'm almost out of this stuff. All right, work time. All right, so I'm pretty happy with that. And I was very careful on the label, but I took my wax and grease remover, my final wipe solvent from my body shop supplies, and I just kind of hose this down. So I'm chasing that off with a bit of compressed air so we could see. All right, so take a look at that. I mean, everything looks good. All the mechanism is clean all the way around. We've got a little bit of that stuff on there. I'm not trying to make this look new. It can never look new again. I don't want it to look new. I just want it to look cared for. And so I'm going to stop right there, and I'm just going to lubricate the moving parts, and we're going to move on to the next spot. Incidentally, this blowgun came from Mark's shop as well. So, yeah, it's like a family reunion right here. I love it. All right. All right, so this is just my little oiler. It's filled with synthetic engine oil, which, as we know, synthetics don't degrade. So I'm just hitting all the important wear items here, all the movable bits and pieces. Just giving it a little bit of love down here. Those thingies. So when the action happens here, we've got 2 more pistons here. And to me, they just need a little sip of synthetic happiness. When we pump them up, everything's nice and smooth and the operation is really good. And I don't want this thing to turn turtle on me either, so I'm going to go ahead and keep the center of gravity down. And there. Okay, so for my money, we're done inside here. I'll hang that guy right there on the floor. And I'm just going to go down here. Now, as far as history and preservation, all that kind of stuff, the only real interesting thing is here. Look at the overspray. There's overspray right here. This is from the factory. There's a stamping number, a part number, all the brad. Well, that's a little loose. We're not going to mess around with anything here. All I'm going to do is clean this up. And our buddy canola oil is going to help us do that without a abrasion, without a solvent that could, you know, loosen up that paint. That paint is probably a nitrocellulose lacquer, or it could be an enamel. I don't know, but it's probably not a catalyzed paint. So it's not weak because it's lasted a long time, but I want to respect it and leave it there so that when we pop the top on this joker, we're seeing how it was made. I know you've heard the stories about guys that find out where the overspray was. Mustang guys, it's typically in the first-gen cars, it's a red oxide primer on the bottom of the floor pan, and they weren't masked up. So when they went across the assembly line and were hand-painted, the overspray blew up underneath. So when we're restoring a car like that, we try and recreate the overspray. Mopars famously were painted with plugs in place, and there's overspray on the manifolds, and it burns off. That's true restoration, restoring it back to the condition it was at the time of manufacture. That's the literal definition of restoration. First, do no harm, right? And this is just a little bit of my wax and grease remover on here to get rid of the canola oil, which I find to be a really interesting cleaner. I'm here to tell you, if I didn't know what that was, I'm selling this at a swap meet as antique wall art. It's just that cool looking. So, let's get into the nitty-gritty. On top here, I want to do the same thing. We've got, looks like a silver paint here. It might be a white paint. No, it looks like it's white paint. I don't want to screw any of that up. So I'm going to do the same cleaning process with my shop stuff and go in with some bristled brushes and do my dead level best not to disturb any of that paint because it's already flaking off of there. And if you're wondering what this canola oil smells like, it kind of smells to me like Pam cooking spray. It's sort of a weird, interesting, and somewhat annoying odor. But it doesn't smell like your typical spray lubricants or penetrating oils, because it's not, well, it's an oil, but it's not. It's plant-based. All right, so that's doing what I wanted it to do. It's making that paint come alive a little bit, getting the greasy layer across the top of it removed. And I want to expose as much of the blue paint as I can. And look how that's happening in there. And if you guys want me to get back on the Camaro, I will. I will, but this is something that, this is just shop maintenance wrapped into a really nice nostalgic trip down memory lane for me. Oh, look at that. So I'm loving this. I don't think we could do any better than what we're doing right here. I might do a little bit more, and it'll soak, that'll lift that up. I might do a little bit more in here on the K. Yeah, the blue's getting uncovered in these little recesses. Look at that. Look how she's coming back. That one's done. So I'm going to stop there. That's a good level of clean. We've exposed some of the paint, and we've exposed a lot more of the blue paint. I mean the lettering paint. And we've exposed a lot more of the blue. And it's just going to kind of wake it up, make it come alive again. And this is, again, it's my solvent-based wax and grease remover for my body shop supplies. And I've said this before to you guys, if you don't have wax and grease remover and you want to do something like this, naphtha from a home center or a Tractor Supply, something like that, naphtha works well for this too. It's a mild solvent. And also, some of you guys have educated me and schooled me that naphtha works well for lighter fluid. I had no idea about that. All right, I might do one more cleaning step before I lock in with the coating that I'm going to put on here to preserve it. But that right there, to me, super nice. Super nice. Okie doke. So I'm going to put this off to the side, and we're going to call this ready for the next step. So I've got this effectively cleaned. It brought it back to life a little bit. Look what it did to the wheel. Isn't that cool? That bright red paint. And what I'm going to do now is just, I'm going to lube the axles, just a drop, and the bearings in the actual corner wheel. And it's amazing, just in regular maintenance, if you do this to your floor jacks on a regular basis, it's kind of amazing how good they feel when you roll them across the floor. So this is not a bad idea for your equipment, whether you have vintage equipment or not. But even the wheels, I'm just geeking over this, man. I hope you guys are enjoying this because I am. And right here we've got a pivot point right there with the jack handle. Just a little drop in there. So now I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. Yeah, substantial. And so far we haven't screwed up, so that's a really good thing. Yeah, more working. I am going to, I'm going to see if I can lift the pad up and see if it remains stable. So I want to do what we did here inside the lever and all that stuff. See, it starts to get really kind of questionable. All right, we're going to stop right there. So this cleaning process, I could stop right there, but like I said, I want to lock in the patina. We're going to do one more surface prep process that's non-destructive, and then we'll talk about the coating that we're going to use to lock it in place. And there's schmutz in here. I'm just going to give it a clean up. Same thing we've been doing. Of course, I've got to get the other side. And this stuff, it can soak in. It's already shown me that it's not going to kill any of the coatings. And I'm not lubing these front wheels like the others, because if you look in here, there's a grease zerk. So I'm going to pack these bearings and grease them up. Not pack them, I'm going to grease them up. There is blue paint in there. All right, we're going to let that soak. Here's something cool. Come and look at this. So under here we see a repair. See that? It's been brazed. So here the paint's burned off. I know it's probably not factory because the paint's been burned off, but yeah, you can see where it's been previously repaired, and we know that it has been rebuilt and overhauled. So the story I'm going to tell myself about this is that it was in place, it was in service, and it was a failure down here somewhere in the stem, and they sent it back to Walker to get refurbished, or somebody that does that for Walker. That's where we got the rebuilt with genuine Walker parts sticker on the cylinder. I don't know, it tells me a little bit more of the story. All right, so we're ready for the final step before we put the wipe-on matte clear on. So I'm going to put this guy back in place, like so. Stan and Ollie are coming over here. And I cleaned these with the same materials, but the last thing I did was to use 4/0 steel wool. It's super fine steel wool. I use it actually for cleaning overspray off of glass and chrome. So it's non-destructive, but it's going to put a micro tooth into that surface, this old enamel. So that was my last step. So I'm going to do a quick wipe down of Walker, and then we're ready for the coatings. So I'm going to get these guys off to the side. I've seen Derek use SOS pads kind of for the same purpose for his patina protectors and the wipe-on stuff, shine juice or whatever he calls it. And it works really well and sets up the surface. As a painter, I know that I've got to have a mechanical bond, i.e. a sanding scratch, for my paint coatings to stick. And although this is going to be a super thin coating on the top, we still need to follow the rules of adhesion. And so we've cleaned this thing pretty good, but look at all, I'm still getting schmutz off the top of it. That's fine. We'll leave a little bit of somebody's DNA behind probably. That's okay. I almost don't want it too clean, you know? It's got to be earthy, earthy. I'm not sure this pocket matters all that much, but there's still traces of the original blue paint in there, so we'll lock that in for the propriety of it. Did the handle, did this side, didn't do this side yet. That towel's toast. I wonder how they painted these things from the factory. Do you think they hand painted them? A lot of this machinery back in the day was dipped. Or some of it was, I know that. This looks like, well, we saw overspray on the back side of the lid, so maybe that answers the question. These might have been hung up on an assembly line and painted with pneumatic paint. So, some trivia and history for you. When cars went from being brush painted on the assembly line to being painted with air-powered, i.e. atomized pneumatic is a fancy word for it, painting systems, it was actually on Henry Ford's assembly line. He's credited for the transition between manually applied coatings and pneumatically applied coatings. And that happened in the early 20s. I don't remember the exact year, but I've studied up on this for my classes and for my training. And it's kind of fascinating. And the reason that Henry Ford wanted spray paint was because the coating looked so much better. It looked so much smoother, and there was less maintenance to do on top of everything after the coating was applied. Vintage instrument makers used to brush paint on and layer it up and sand it flat between coats and then layer it up again and sand it between coats, and that's where the term color sanding was actually, I don't know if you say invented, but created. So finishes were color sanded because it was sanded between coats of color. And that term is stuck all the way through professional cut and rub, surface correction, whatever you want to call it these days, show car polishing. But Henry Ford wanted a better looking vehicle for less money. He literally did want to satisfy the buying group that was emerging in this country that wanted personal transportation and the freedom of that. So his goals, his drive, was to provide that for American people. And say what you want about the politics and Henry Ford this and that, we owe a lot of our, not only industry, but our, quite frankly, culture, like it or not, to the innovations from those early pioneers in personal transportation. So it's just kind of fun. It's kind of neat to give them a nod every once in a while, right? Now, we've scuffed everything with quadruple aught steel wool. We've cleaned it off, and dude, I could just leave it like that. It looks neat, but I want to take it up to the next level. And stand and ollie. And Laurel and Hardy, when we get the chance, when I get actually functional wheels and tires on Paw Paw out there, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. So we got everybody prepped, ready for a final coating. Here's what we're going to be using. This is Wipe-On Clearcoat from Vice Grip Garage. I was down at Derek's place the other day, and I saw it sitting on the shelf. I said, man, I want to try that out because I'm a spray paint guy. I want to spray my Clearcoat on, but he's made the application process simple with this stuff. I like the fact that it's got a hardener, which means that it locks into place. There's lots of 1K Clearcoats on that are great. In my Patina book that I showed you, I used a 1K clear from Duplicolor that was great, and it locked everything down. It was a nice satin finish, just like this is a nice satin finish. But what 1K means is that it can be reversed, it can be reflowed. 2K means that it cross-links, the polymers dance with each other and lock in, and it literally becomes a hard film. It becomes something else instead of a liquid. Everything cures and everything dries, it becomes a solid, but this locks in and becomes something else. It's, the technical term is thermoset. And the thermoplastic clears, which are the ones that can be reflowed, like the Duplicolor one that I use, it looks great. But that door sitting outside, it's deteriorated over time. And this, it doesn't. So that's the nature of a coating with a hardener as opposed to one without. Nothing wrong with either one, but if you want stuff to last 40 forevers, the hardener and locking it into place is probably where you want to go. So he ended up giving me a setup here, and I wanted to try it on Walker Texas Ranger. So this has an 8-to-1 mix ratio, 8 parts clear and 1 part catalyst. Now there is a direction sheet that you can download off his website, and it shows you exactly what to do with it. Application steps, safety precautions, all that kind of stuff, because this can be sprayed too, I guess. But anyway, all the instructions are on there. So I've read them, and I'm going to do a single coat application. The brush that I'm going to use is this soft foam brush. They're super cheap. They're kind of disposable. Not kind of, they're exactly disposable. And it's going to put a super even layer. I'm not doing a paintbrush because the layer is going to be the coating that's deposited in between the bristles, and it's going to be a little more inconsistent. This has a closed knit cell pattern, and it's going to be super, super even. And I want an even coating because it has to dry evenly. So super simple. So it's an 8-to-1 ratio. So I'm going to mix into this cup, and I don't need very much. And all the mixed ratios are up on the top here. You can see 411, 421, and then there's equal parts, and there's ounces, and I don't have an 8-to-1 ratio here. So we can do a couple of different things. I can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then one more is 9. That's too much material. So what I've done here is 8-to-1, divide that in half, it's 4 to 1/2, right? So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 parts of clear, and then a half a part of catalyst, of hardener. And that's going to get me an accurate mix ratio with plenty of material to do one single coat over all 3 of my guys. Here's one thing you really need to remember, regardless of whose product it is. This is a matte finish. The properties that make it matte, that flatten it out, float to the top as the film cures. So what that means is there's solids that will settle down into the bottom. So if you pour this out without shaking it, you're going to be really disappointed. And you're going to call VGG and say, hey, this stuff didn't work. It's shiny and I wanted matte. Do this. It doesn't take much, but it will settle in the bottom. So I recommend to shake it for 2 minutes. What's 2 minutes out of your life? Come on. Give me 2 minutes. Because if you don't, when you apply it, it might look shiny. Then you're going to be mad at somebody. When you should be mad at the little particles down at the bottom. Or at yourself because you didn't read the instructions that said shake well before use. So that's on you. I just said that. I just called you out. All right, so that's shaken lots. And I shook it before also. And when I did my test spray, paint, wipe, brush, I shook it then too yesterday. All right, so we're gonna go, I hate that it's foamy. It just is though, whatever. All right, so there's up to the first line. I'll set my cap on that. And for my hardener, we're going to go up to the next line, which is right there. And look at that. So that's a brand new bottle of catalyst, and we're just going to go up to that line. And that's going to be all that we need. So now I'm going to mix this up. I'm not going to mix it up with this. I want something different. Hang on. All right. So this is just a stir stick. This might look a little milky. Most satin or flat clears do. Don't worry about it. It's not going to affect the finish. That's just the flattening agent that's in it. It's causing it to look a little bit weird. I'm not going to tack this off. I'm not going to say it doesn't matter, but I've cleaned it pretty dang thoroughly 3 times. So a little bit of surface trash is not going to bug me, especially since it's a matte finish and not a shiny clear. So the only tip I'm going to give you on application for this is pay attention to gravity. Top down maybe, right? So let's just start at the top and work our way down. And this we want one single coat wiped on, brushed on, whatever we want to call it, foamed on. We're going to foam on a coat here. Is that FOMO that I'm worried about? I don't know. All right, so let's do this. And like I said, I like the evenness that this application brush does. Oh, look at that. I got all kinds of runs in there. Oh, well. Sorry. It's going to be super thin anyways, so I'm just going to roll with it, man. I don't know. You see why I didn't want to mix very much. This stuff goes a really long way. The instructions say to do slight overlaps with your passes, and it's the Wild West. I'm all over the place. I'm out of control here, but I'm kind of trying to respect those instructions because it was formulated for that. So over here, I missed a spot on this side. Honestly, what I'm trying to do is, I didn't realize this brush holds that much material, and it does. So what I'm trying to do is kind of squeeze it out and then even it out and brush it on the surface. Kind of a freaking mess is what I'm making. But I'm hoping that chemistry wins at the end of the day. I'm not doing the insides because it doesn't matter to me. I've got those areas super clean. But I do want to get a complete coat on this outside. Place in there, look at that. Now it's El Duno, right there. Get the wheel. Look how the red comes to life when we hit it with that clear. And that's not going to stay like that, but maybe it'll pop just a little bit more when I get it done. There's a holiday right there. And I think that's got the main body of the jack. I'm not doing the handle because I'm not. I don't know why. I do know why, but it's got those neat wear marks where the paint's kind of polished into it. But I am going to do these guys. I'm not going to do the serrated parts. So you're probably wondering to yourself, which one is Stan and which one is Ollie? So Stan has got more of a stain on it. And it's I think it's from another paint job or something that got spilled on it. So stain is close to Stan, and that's how I'm going to remember it. And when we look at him here, look at from this side here. When we look at him, right there, the discoloration down at the bottom, that's what I'm going to call the naming. So Stan has the stain, Ollie doesn't. I don't know why I'm obsessing over that. Is it the fumes that are getting to me? I can't really smell this stuff anymore, but could very well be. So yeah, top tip, do this in a well-ventilated area. I'm going to let this stuff sit once I get finished brushing it on. VOC is short for volatile organic compound. And as paint products cure out, dry, cross-link, which these will do because there's a catalyst, right? VOC is what outgasses or evaporates off of the top of these paint products. And that's what contains the stuff that's probably not the best thing to, especially when it's put into a spray. That's the stuff that contains the stuff that we don't really want to huff and breathe in. So, what we're going to do is clear the room, take a little break, and let this stuff flash. That's the cool kid term for dry in body shop land. Not cure. Cure is different. Cure is full cross-link. But we're going to let this stuff dry. Alrighty then, I can already see it's kind of starting to matte finish itself. And I used, where did we mix up to? So you can see here, I've used a little more than half of what I mixed up, because there was my full line, right there. And I've used more than half of it. So if that's a little bit of waste, that's fine. There's tons more. This doesn't take very much at all. The interesting thing about brushing it on as opposed to spraying it on is that most of the waste in paint is just overspray that just flies out into the air and goes all over everything else. So it's more efficient to brush it on, and we're going to use less. So All right, then. We're going to let this flash, and I'll be back.
It's science!
So if you've ever wondered why this little sealing ring is on the top of some of the catalysts and some of the products in the paint and body realm, here's why. This is a sealing ring, and it keeps atmosphere and oxygen from going into something like a catalyst. And what that does is it keeps it with an indefinite shelf life. What's a shelf life? Well, it's how long it survives on the shelf without going bad in the can. Sometimes, and you body guys know, that this hardener can go bad on the shelf, and you don't want that. It's expensive. You don't want to have to replace it when you don't have to. So as soon as you pop this top off, it introduces oxygen and atmosphere into this product. The reason there's no oxygen and atmosphere on this product when it's in storage is because there is an inert gas, like an argon or some sort of a shielding gas, that displaces the air and oxygen because it's heavier, and it keeps the oxygen from prematurely catalyzing the catalyst. So once you pop the top, the timer starts running and the catalyst can go bad in the can. So here's a fix. You can go to woodworking shops, you can get Bloxygen. It is an inert gas that's in here. You can just spray it in and it displaces the air, puts a layer on top, and you can put the cap back on, you buy back your shelf life. This is actually a heavier gas than oxygen, but it's not inert, it's butane. Propane is also heavier than oxygen, but it's not inert. Inert means it can't be ignited. Inert gas is an argon. So if you don't want to buy this and you have this, then what you can do is disconnect the drive roll of your welder, turn your gas on. I must say this out loud many times. You're not welding it, you're putting gas in. Just a few seconds is all you need. And you're putting a layer of that argon CO2 blend that's going to cover the bottom of the catalyst and is heavier than air, and it blocks out the oxygen. So within a few seconds, you've already paid for the gas if you got a welder. Now you've bought your shelf life back. And if you don't have a welder, just get some of this stuff. You can get it at woodworking supplies, and of course you can get it online. So anyway, you're welcome for that. We're going to wait for this stuff to dry overnight and then come back and take a look at it, and we'll show you what the finished product looks like. So overnight has happened, and look at this. It's beautiful in its crustiness, and you can see the provenance in this piece of equipment, this vintage tool. We took the dirt off of it, but I didn't take the character away from it. I didn't change any of the patina. To me, it even tells more of the story. It speaks more clearly to me. You can just kind of see, and we uncovered a couple of secrets. The repair under here, the red wheels. I didn't have any idea that the wheels were red. And I've lubricated all the bearings and all the pivot points and moving parts and greased up the Zerks, and we got Stan and Ollie cleaned up and done the same way. Laurel and Hardy are soon to come. And I didn't change the patina. Now, part of patina is actually dirt, dust, all that history. And we cleaned a lot of that off. But it's not a Tiffany lamp. And it's not going to decrease the value of this piece of equipment because it's mostly a very personal value to me. Even though a vintage piece of equipment like this, yeah, you're probably going to pay a little bit for it. So anyway, especially one that's in perfect condition. So for me, by the way, thanks for a super easy product to use, Vice Grip Garage. It worked really well, and I showed you how simple it was. With any paint project, you got to have a clean substrate. So we did that, and man, it brought it. I'm not going to say it brought it back to life because it never went away. But now it's just a cool piece of Art Deco functional shop equipment. So I'm really, really happy with this result. And it's just one of those things that I'm going to appreciate every time I use it. And I'm going to think of my good buddy Mark Lambert every time I use it. So, that said, we speak their name and they're never really gone. Mark Lambert.